Chinese and English, which allows users to upgrade language settings of the software. The software language default is Chinese.
Yeah, that all seems very familiar. Hey everyone. Hey everyone, that's the wrong intro. Good evening, good afternoon everyone. Glad that you're here. I am watching Stefan's DAS 3D unboxing on YouTube live right now. It's interesting stuff. It's your Chinese SLA 3D printer unboxing. It looks really nice, but they still have to work on the experience. That is like the one thing that is common across all these machines. And I need to mute myself on this computer. There we go. Okay, but why are we here? We are here for the monthly Patreon Hangout. So yeah, again, thanks everyone for coming. Let me start with I'm hoping you guys are seeing me and not some screen cap. Yes. Let me start with some updates. Because stuff is happening, stuff is going on. So I guess 4 things or so? 4 things I want to talk about before we get into the Q&A. First of all, the podcast, the Melt Zone podcast. You might have seen it on Twitter, you might have seen it on other places. Crap, I wanted to post it to Patreon too. I should post it to Patreon, I will do that in a second. Stefan Hermann from CNC Kitchen and myself, we are recording a podcast on 3D printing, on YouTubing, on the entire bandwidth of stuff we're doing. It's a way laid back concept. It is not as well, it's barely edited at all in contrast to like what we do on YouTube. I think it's good fun. We did I guess kind of episode 0 pilot kind of thing, and that is live right now. You can check it out at themelt.zone. So if you're interested in that, and if you occasionally do enjoy a podcast format, that would be a great place to start. Part-time owner saying, yeah, new laptop. Yes, finally new travel stuff that can actually edit video. This thing is actually faster than my old 15-inch Lenovo, whatever. But that's not what we're here for. So, podcast number 1, themelt.zone is the website. Go check it out if you're interested in that. What else? I'm looking for an editor. I've already gotten a few emails for people who want to edit for me. I will be going through those shortly because I don't know if you've noticed by the content I've been posting and by kind of the pace and stuff I've been doing, but I feel like I've been getting burnt up with this job, with pushing out videos so fast that I'm running around like a headless chicken, and I'm kind of leaving behind so many things that I need to do, have to do, but I feel like I don't have the time for it. So hopefully finding an editor and just being able to post more consistently, because that's the goal, to have a buffer of like a week of content. Hopefully that's going to help me achieve that. And I will be picking one this coming week, and hopefully that's going to be something that can take a lot of load off my shoulders, and it is actually the Patreon goal. I've had an employee at the start of this year that kind of didn't work out, so I am now working towards fulfilling that Patreon goal, because it's something that's going to allow me to publish more content, better content, and it's going to make my life a whole lot easier. So that's that kind of gears or meshes together with having better content. Cool. And maybe like the third thing I want to talk about, because the next hangout might be after that, in October, starting October 15th. Again, you might have seen it on Twitter. October 15th, I am heading out to Bath in the UK. I am going on a road trip. I'm driving there. It's like 12 hours to drive, so not something your typical German does, but I've got like 6, 7, 8 stops on the way. I'm going to be talking to Das Filament, Gino Heuske, Ultimaker, maybe, I don't know, they've not confirmed yet. Formerly Dutch Filaments, E3D, a bunch of companies on the way. That's going to be an epic road trip. I don't know, I guess if you're somewhere on that route, I'm going to be going from basically Munich to Frankfurt to the Netherlands, and then over to Oxford and Bath. If you're on that route, maybe shoot me a message and we can grab a coffee or something, or lunch or whatever. We'll see. And that is basically updates for me done. If you've seen the Meltzone podcast, you'll know that I'm planning to do a CNC build. That's going to happen in a few months. And yeah, let's get into questions. So, to Frankfurt, I should also get back into live streaming because this is then over to Oxford. Yeah, this stuff is actually working now. I always had the problem maybe shoot me a message and we can grab a working here or something, or lunch or whatever. You're probably hearing me twice. Cool. Yeah, I've always had the problem where my tech for live streaming wasn't working properly, and now it's actually working pretty darn well. So I should get back into that. So let's start with Julian. Julian Shu. What do you think about the E3D tool changer and their beta tester campaign? Not supplying a working printer, but just the mechanics without heads. Yes, so the E3D tool changer, we saw that, I think that was announced at MRF, at MRF earlier this year, which is like a massive 3D printer. It's like 60 centimeters in every direction, and it has 4 tool heads that can quick swap. There's a coupler in there that they've changed it around a ton, that basically grabs a tool head and attaches it to the carriage. So that is looking absolutely baller. The way they're launching it is they're not supplying an entire machine. They're not supplying a machine with electronics and power supply and tool heads and whatnot. They are instead just delivering the mechanics. They're delivering the mechanics system for the tool changer, and they're delivering the mechanics platform for the printer, and you can put in your own electronics and kind of make it work. Typically that's going to be Do-It. You do want to really put a Do-It board into that, because that's what it's kind of made for, and Do-It is what they are demoing it with too. But their take on not shipping a fully functional printer is that they're not seeing it as a fully functional printer yet. Eventually it's going to be there. Eventually it might be a full product, but for now it is just, they don't want to have that expectation of, we're going to ship you a full printer and then you should expect a full working printer, because it's not that. It is very certainly a beta testing program. Of course, they offered one to me. I was like, guys, sorry, I don't do beta. I do consulting, but like beta testing, where it's just you go figure it out, it's kind of not what provides a ton of value if you cram it, well, if you even can cram it into a video. So I opted out of that, but I think it's a nice concept. It does limit your beta tester pool, who wants to request a printer and who even wants a printer. It limits it to the people who know how to make a printer work with their own electronics and know how to configure that, because otherwise you'd get a ton of like just people who wanted to see it, who are like, oh yeah, that looks so cool, I want one of those, but don't have the skills to actually make it run. So for them, that really makes sense to go about it that way. So I think that's a good way to launch it. Sweet. Paul Arden is asking, during the Prusa factory tour it was mentioned that the print farm uses serial to Ethernet adapters to talk to the printers, which is, that is, I think, one of the coolest thing about the farm, the way they manage it. They just have a tablet, basically a Samsung 10-inch tablet or something, on one end of the rack, and they see which printers are working, which ones are like done, etc. And that is really nice. They are using pretty much standard hardware for the serial to Ethernet. I don't know which exact model that is, and that is actually what Paul is asking about. So a bunch of different options. Any ideas of what would work well and where on a mini or Einsi Rambo they are connected to? Yeah, so they are. I'm not sure if the Einsi Rambo has the serial port broken out, and I don't have tools to open up my Mark III here. But it would, if it's a TTL to Ethernet, so serial to Ethernet adapter, it would be connected to the TX and RX pins on the board itself. I think RS232 even has different levels than what the Arduino is using, so there's some level shifter. It's definitely custom hardware. Like that's a given. If anything, there must be some test point on the board, or some place at the. Does it have an FTDI? It might use an Arduino. It's soldered onto the board in some way. It's not a plug and play solution for sure. but it definitely connects to your board. I think you could even run a custom firmware that moves the serial port onto one of the exposed pins, but I don't think they are doing that. I think they're just running the standard MK3, well, now MK3 firmware. Byron, I don't think, yeah, thanks for that offer of taking my beta spot, but I don't think that exactly works that way. I don't think E3D have any left even. I think that they're all gone now. Cool, yeah, Paul, sorry that couldn't answer that, but yeah, definitely look for, it just depends on what sort of driver you can use with your serial to Ethernet cards, and then you definitely need some sort of a level shifter, but that should be pretty much standard hardware. Jan is asking, would you have a large 3D printer that you would recommend or suggest? A printer to print terrain models for architects and urbanists. That's a word I've not heard before, but that sounds legit. Currently, I print Infor prints on Prussias and then glue the pieces back together. But this leaves seams in the middle. One of the favorites seems to be the CR5, but not sure I want to go this way. Beast VE from Cultivate 3D. I have not heard of those. And the other one, a CNC 3D print design might be interesting too. So yes, let me quickly pull up the CR, oh, browsing history, nice. So I guess that's a Creality. I have not heard of the CR5. Oh, that's okay. But that's not that large. That is only barely larger than a Prusa. So it really depends on what you're going for, Jan. If you really need something that is massive, and if you're doing this for business, which you seem to be doing, maybe look into a stacker that's like a 10,000 euro machine. It's a great machine, like it prints really well, but it's a bit expensive. The other option, of course, are the CR10 in the various sizes. You can get the CR10 in the standard 300 by 300. You can also get it in a 400 and I think even a 500 by 500, which is crazy. But that is, if you're looking at some like a low cost option, I think that's a very good choice. The CR10 is surprisingly robust for what it is. It's just a very basic printer. And you kind of need to work around some of the limitations the Hodden has, and just the fact that it's a massive moving bed. It is pretty well tuned from the factory, so I think that would be a nice start. When it comes to the Beast VE, I have not worked with them yet. What is the brand that Joel is working with? Damn it, they were at Murph. Joel Telling, the 3D printing nerd, has... it's on the tip of my tongue. Yeah, look at his channel. It's featured on there, definitely. It's a pretty large printer, and I don't think it's square. I think it's wider than it's deep. So he seems to be pretty happy with that. So maybe check that out as well. And they do make dual extruders, though that might not be a good application for you. And when it comes to my CNC or 3D print design, I'm thinking that might be from the podcast, the CNC that I talked about. So yeah, I am planning on building a CNC that has like around 500 by 500 by, I don't know, 15 or 150 or 200 millimeter build volume. That of course is large, and for terrain models, I think that would be ideal. It's just that it's going to be built way too massive for to make sense to just use it as a 3D printer. It's going to be built to also mill aluminum at least, and maybe even steel. We'll see about that. But there are cheap kits like that out there where you can just get a CNC kit if you don't need a ton of Z height. What is it? It's I think like the Fireball routers, those are a thing, right? And not the Shapeoko, but the same company I think also makes like router tables. If you don't need a ton of Z height, that could be an option to modify, but you will need to plan on putting completely new electronics in it, on making a hot end fit on that. It's gonna work, it's gonna print fine, but it's gonna be a custom job. It's gonna be a ton of work to modify it. Sweet, I'm hoping that answered that in the full extent. Christian is asking about Revolve and Redeem firmware. So That's the firmware that is running on the, god damn it, not BeagleBone, but the, names. I can't, I've got the board somewhere here. It is like literally right over here. Let me check if I've got it here. No, but if someone on in chat can enlighten me, it's probably gonna come to me in a second. It's there. Hold up. Yeah, so basically that's the firmware that is running on this specific hardware. There's the BeagleBone. There's the Replicape. Yes, right here. Found it. Yeah, that's the firmware that is running on the Replicape and the new successor hardware that is, that has been announced at Murph. I don't know if that's out yet already. When I used this, when I tested this, I mean, it worked really well. It was really convenient to just configure everything in a browser. At the time, it was lacking many of the features that you were getting from some more basic hardware than Marlin. It is, it's geared. It's caught up. Like, it's definitely caught up. It's been massively improved in the meantime. But the Replicape is kind of geared towards high performance, high speed, and with the driver choice, these are DRVs, right? Yeah, DRV 8825. It kind of fits into that entire concept of having something that can handle a bit of brute force. So this is like super light duty CNC controller thing. And also just the amount of processing power it has is insane, and the way everything works together. It's definitely very slick and elegant firmware. Just look into whether it's doing all the things you want it to do, and then make a call of whether that's enough for you. But I think it's a great choice. It's just, it runs on the exact hardware that is supplied for the project, and that is it. Like, it doesn't run on anything else simply because it is built around what the BeagleBone can do. So yeah, it's mostly about the hardware. The firmware, I think, is pretty good. If you like the hardware, go for it. Check it out. Gmax, yes, Gcreate. That's the one I was looking for. Thank you, Andrew. Volker, the MP CNC, that might also be an option. Yes, that is a very light duty CNC, just to follow up to the question about a large format 3D printer. The MP CNC, the mostly printed CNC, that is very much something that I would not want to mill on. It's more like an engraver, a very light duty router. But it would be perfectly suitable for 3D printing. So yeah, that would be a good start. But again, it is a fully custom solution. It's something that you will need to set up and make work for you, because it's not a finished kit. It's not like a Prusa or an original Prusa that just you take it out of the box and it prints. It's a whole different thing. Paul, again, you already commented. Oh, you guys can ask as many questions as you want. But this is not a question, this is praise for the Melt Zone podcast, which is spelled differently. The Melt Zone is one word, but I'll forgive you for that. Whether we like the concept, and Paul certainly does. Well, thank you for that. That was episode 0, so we're hoping it's gonna get better from there on out. We've already, figured out a ton of stuff we did wrong in that episode, and we want to do it better in the next ones, and actually episode 1. So that might be coming up way earlier than we were expecting. We were planning on doing it monthly because we didn't really know what sort of effort it would be, and it went so smoothly, it went so fast. We might do bi-weekly, every 2 weeks. That could be great, but yes. But it's good fun. It is good fun, and Stefan is a great guy. So yeah, thank you. Gordon is asking, will printing TPU Plus on a Prusa Mark III onto PEI damage the PEI? Yeah, yes it will. I don't know what TPU Plus is. It might just be some, I don't know, proprietary manufacturer gibberish, but TPU, especially TPU, will stick massively well to these PEI coated sheets, and also to like regular stuck on PEI. Do not print directly with TPU onto PEI. That is why I always have, one side. Well, if this touches a bit, it makes a huge mess. But which is why I usually have glue stick over my PEI. This is, you can even see it kind of peeling off here already. In case of doubt, the glue stick will release from the PEI, while TPU might not. TPU might bond so well that it just rips the PEI straight off. The coated ones are better than the taped ones, the classic ones with the PEI film on there, but they are still not impervious to user error. And if you check out the handbook, this guy, I think it even says to use glue stick with with TPU specifically, I think. And yeah. Don't print TPU onto PEI. It's not worth it. Put glue stick underneath. And with TPU, especially with the flexible stuff, you don't need a ton of adhesion. You just need it to stick down, because it's not going to put on a ton of force. It doesn't have the rigidity to actually pull up. So something like glue stick will definitely work, even if it's not like the exact perfect glue stick for your application. Cool. Part-time Ronin. Well, good to see you again. Long time subscriber, long time follower of the channel. What is the maximum length you recommend for 2020 extrusion to use in a box frame printer? Consider that the corner bracket is as rigid as it can be. Okay, so I'm guessing that that's supposed to mean that the corner bracket, I shouldn't worry about the corner bracket. The corner bracket is going to be as rigid as possible. So I'm looking at my Cerberus Reborn Delta printer right there, which certainly is too flimsy. So that is using a 1 meter tall, actually I can show you. That is using a 1 meter tall, give me a second here, I gotta configure some stuff. 1 meter tall 2020 extrusion, and it is for sure not rigid enough. I was seeing a ton of ringing, but that might also have been because of the, there it is, because of the way the, oh yeah, that's crab all over it, but yeah, this standard 2020, and then there's 2020 up top there, there's corner brackets, but there are double height corner brackets in the bottom here. So it's relatively rigid, but because of the way the Delta kinematics work, this just started like wobbling all over the place. If you have it really rigid, it might work, but I wouldn't really trust it. So yeah, you can go, yeah, and actually let me follow it up. What you can see here is these aluminum plates that I put on here. These are screwed down to the bottom frame and the top frame. These just give a ton of like the shear stiffness to each of the sides. So this is basically what is making this printer super rigid, and that's working out pretty well. So that might be an option if you still want to use the 2020s. Just put some plates on it, something like what Ultimaker is doing with the acrylic frame or die bond frame. That is also plate material that gives the frame a ton of shear strength. I guess even though shear strength isn't like scientifically correct, but that is giving the printer a ton of rigidity. If you can do that, if you can just create like triangles, that's your goal, then you will be massively better off than just using the 2020s. If you're just using the 2020s and you're saying the corners are as rigid as they can get, which is a huge deal in this entire thing, yeah, like a meter is stretching it for sure. I think like 60 centimeters or so might be the limit where I'm comfortable if it's just the 2020, so the 20 by 20 millimeter 80-20 extrusion, or the standard Bosch profiles, the standard machine profiles. You know which ones we're talking about. And I'm glad to see that you guys actually saw that tour of the Cerberus Reborn and wearing on screen cap. Sweet. So yeah, 60 centimeters, I probably wouldn't build it longer than that. You can get beefier versions of 2020. I think there are two different profile versions, the I type and the B type, and one of them is slightly more rigid. So if you get the more rigid one, that might give you a bit of extra heft, but just look at the moments of deflection. What is it in English? Flächenträgheitsmoment is the German word. So they give you numbers of how rigid it is. It's millimeters cubed to the power of 4, something like that. Look which one is larger. So maybe get the more rigid one if you do the long length. Andre is asking, strange holes. Oh, we're doing 3D Senpai. Nice. Strange holes in the beginning of each top-bottom layer. Just upgraded the feeder to Titan on the Anycubic i3 Mega, but same result. So first question is it actually like a genuine Titan? But for that actually does not matter. So that is looking like, yeah. That's actually... Ooh. What? Yeah, okay. So what would be nice to know is what slicer this is done with. So considering we're getting, is that an ooze line? It looks like an ooze line. So something is definitely limiting your feed rate. So that, since you're saying you've got a yeah, you've got your Titan extruder on there. What hot end are you running? Are you running a, well, whatever comes on the i3 Mega? At 40 millimeters a second, that is quite the degradation. So yeah, if it works on 30, that's good. For sure, this is something struggling with the extrusion and just not letting enough filament out. It might be like a kinked PTFE tube in the hot end. It's also interesting to see that the plastic deposit moves from the center of your part to the corner of the part where the printer actually slows down. So this leads me to believe that the extruder is actually properly pushing filament, but something is building up pressure. So that I guess that must be the hot end is building up pressure. You might have a slightly clogged hot end just from this. Maybe PTFE tube is kinked, or you have something in your nozzle that is just partially blocking it. That's what I would say here. Otherwise, print hotter. Don't print at like 170 degrees. That is never a good idea. Print hotter. That might also alleviate some issues. And this is what, well, Simplify 3D, I don't do Simplify 3D because I find it way too complex for what it actually does. But look for a setting that is like infill perimeter overlap. Cura has always had that setting where it basically tells your printer to move the infill line slightly into, are you seeing the mouse cursor at all? Where it's telling you to move the infill line slightly into the perimeter. So it creates more overlap, it squishes the materials more into each other, and it's going to create a look more like that. If you have that, use it. It's a fudge factor, but it might be worth looking into. The other thing that you can maybe look into is whether all your axes are properly rigid. If you have, how does it work? Yeah, if you have slack in your belt, it might actually keep your printer from reaching the far end of its travel move. So if you have slack, it does it work like that? Yeah. Your hot end might actually stop just shy of that. I'm not seeing. Oh, this is just one direction, right? Sometimes if you have diagonal infill, yeah, sometimes you see the line spacing inconsistent, like it's going to be short, long distance, etc. But I don't know which orientation these were printed in, but that could also be a culprit. So yeah, check for belts, check that those are properly tight. Check your pulleys, check just the your standard printer maintenance. I think I even have a video with just your basic maintenance. Check your pulleys, check your belts, check that everything is just tight and well assembled. And yeah, if that doesn't work, increase the infill overlap perimeter squish setting. That Simplify 3D apparently also has. Thanks for that, Foka. Also, if it's a V5, it shouldn't have a PTFE tube inside. It should maybe have a PTFE tube in the in the top where it connects to Bowden setup, but it shouldn't. V5 doesn't have PTFE going into the hot end. If it's a knockoff V5 that comes with a PTFE, well, that might also be an issue. So the second part of that, horizontal lines on the print, is that Z wobble? Is that Z wobble? Wow. So what I'm looking at over here, this looks very, very regular, very, periodic. This over here also has some periodicity to it, whereas down here it looks like it's on a different pitch. It looks like this is way finer than that. So the way you can basically find out is whether it's Z wobble or not is if you just take your print and hold it up to your hold it up to your Z-axis spindle, and I should actually switch over to me so you guys can see that. This is a 4-start, so it doesn't make a ton of sense, but hold it up to your spindle and check if the threads on your spindle line up with the Z wobble. Because physics and math, that will be the same pitch and the same grid basically that your Z lines would be on compared to your Z linear rod. If it does that, it has something to do with the Z-axis linear rod. It might not be Z wobble per se, because wobble implies that it's actually moving the hot end around, and there are also other formulas of Z wobble where it doesn't move the hot end because it's well restrained, but actually bumps the hot end up and down. That can also be something that you might run into. Again, if your Z-axis nuts are particularly loose, you might not see the shift, but you might see an up and down bump. Yeah, temperature drop, not necessarily. If it can keep up, there might not necessarily be a temperature drop. It might just be poor conduction from the into the nozzle. Sometimes that's also a case where you just need to raise the temperature. Yeah, heater cartridge underpowered, I don't think so. At those speeds, we were talking about, what was it, 40, 50 millimeters a second, there is very little or very slim chance that the heater cartridge would be underpowered. All right. I think that's it for today, right? I don't see any more questions. I don't see any more questions in the chat. We did it. We've made it. We've made it all the way through the Q&A section. Depends on placement of the thermistor. Yes, it might also be a bouncing temperature, but that would be inconsistencies in a different way, not as repeatable as the part. If the print is long and narrow, I've seen the part wobble. The part wobble. That is interesting. The part itself shouldn't wobble. Yeah, and if the part wobbled, it would look different. It wouldn't be a regular Z-axis pattern. All right. I think that, yeah, concludes it for today. That pretty much sums it up, wraps it up. Unless you guys have any more questions, but that's going to be it. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for supporting this channel and this endeavor on Patreon. Much appreciated as always. Stay tuned for more The Melt Zone episodes. I think next week or so we might try recording another. And from there on out, we'll see how it goes. Yeah, I'll post the first episode here on Patreon just to get your feedback. And until then, thank you for being here, and I will see you soon-ish. And as always, I don't know when I can actually hit stop, because sometimes it just... Holy shit, I need to get a haircut. Well then, I guess I can click stop now. Now?